test. No promises that I'm going to make it all the way through this one. All right, here we go. Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire taking the political compass test. By viewer request, we are watching this. So let's see. Hope it's good.
Line is called the political compass test, and basically it scans on two separate axes from left to right. On the x-axis it shows communism and collectivism to neoliberalism and libertarianism on the right, and then on the y-axis it goes authoritarian fascism down to anarchism and libertarianism. We'll see how accurate it is. If the scale is correct in any way, I will end up in the right libertarian category. I mean, that's obviously where I am. I think the premises of the questions are incredibly stupid, so let's just jump right in. Question.
I also think the political compass test is stupid. Probably not for the same reasons as Ben Shapiro, but yeah, I believe in dialectical materialism, that history, the hitherto history of existing society is the history of class struggle. I don't think you can map out everybody's politics just on a little map like that and say, the questions on the test are like, do you support spanking your kids? And then if you say yes, it'll be like, you're more authoritarian. Like, that doesn't show anything about someone's politics, right? That's just a weird personal question to decide if somebody has an authoritarian personality, which is a ridiculous idea in general. But yeah, definitely don't agree with the political compass. Kind of silly, but it's still fun.
Number one, if economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. Did Bernie Sanders write this question? What a stupid-ass question, seriously. Like, transnational corporations, which are responsible through the use of free market capitalism for the dramatic decrease of poverty throughout humanity, are now opposed to humanity? So the very phraseology of the question is idiotic. But since they're asking this, I'm just going to assume that their premise is wrong and put strong.
Strongly disagree that if economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity. So Ben Shapiro says, no, socialist Bernie Sanders must have written this question. The interests of transnational corporations serve humanity. Oh, do they? Is that what the United Fruit Company was doing in Guatemala? Is that what all the basically slave plantations and slave mines that were set up all across Latin America to serve transnational corporations all throughout the last century through neo-colonial tactics? Did those benefit the interests of humanity? The interests of transnational corporations are equivalent with the interests of humanity. Ben Shapiro. So, because of that, he answered this question, strongly disagree, that if economic globalization is inevitable, if production continues to become globalized and trade routes continue to be globalized, it should not serve humanity, but it should serve transnational corporations. Like, at least this is supposed to be an easy question, Ben. If you think that the interests of humanity are the same as the interests of transnational corporations, then hit agree. So then you agree that globalization should serve humanity. Why did you hit strongly disagree? Why did you strongly disagree that humanity should be placed or prioritized ahead of transnational corporations? It's because you're a piece of shit and that's the way you actually think. You'll actually serve the donors and the people who fund the Daily Wire over the interests of humanity. You don't care about humanity. You care about continuing to line your pockets by being a conservative political pundit. Wow. I mean, it really says a lot, just his one answer about this question, doesn't it? Moving on.
Corporations have been a lot more helpful to humanity than top-down government-induced schemes. Yeah, I'd always support my country, whether it was right or wrong. I disagree with that, because what if your country is terrible? No one chooses his or her country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. And I generally agree that it's silly to be proud of just where you were born. You should be proud of the country because the country actually doesn't suck. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. Strongly disagree because I don't think that races matter in terms of inherent quality. That's silliness. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. I disagree with that. And the enemy of my enemy can also be my enemy. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Strongly agree. International law is a bunch of crap written by countries that generally have their own priorities. The UN Security Security Council includes Russia and China. So yeah, I'm going to go with strongly disagree.
That's true that the UN Security Council is a bunch of crap, but he's saying the UN Security Council is a bunch of crap because it doesn't allow countries to defy international law and invade other countries more. Ben, that's not why the UN Security Council is a bunch of crap. It's a bunch of crap because it's 5 countries, China and the Soviet Union were on it, or now China and Russia, and the US, the UK, and France. And the first 56 vetoes after the Security Council was formed, the first 56 vetoes were the USSR telling the US that they couldn't invade some country. The first 56 was the USSR saying, no, the US, you can't just invade a sovereign nation because it benefits you economically. So Ben Shapiro looks at that situation, he goes, oh, the UN Security Council is a bunch of crap because China and the USSR won't let the US invade whoever they want. The US should be able to defy international law whenever they want. No, Ben, that's not what's wrong with the UN Security Council. It's the fact that it allows the US to invade sovereign nations as much as they do. You know, or the UN Charter, the way that the UN and international law have been structured. The main problem is that the UN has largely become a tool of Western imperialists in many ways so they can justify their own bloody interventions. But, you know, oftentimes countries like the USSR or China have used their status in the Security Council to block the US from killing millions of people like they did in Iraq and Afghanistan and so many other places. But Ben looks at that and he says, oh, the UN Security Council isn't hawkish enough. I like, imagine being in his brain. Like, that almost makes me sad for him. And look how, and he says everything like he thinks he's a genius. You know? Like, what a sad, sad man. Look at him. He thinks he's so smart right now, and he's arguing that the UN Security Council is messed up. And the UN charters are messed up because they don't allow the US to break international law and invade countries and kill millions of people like they did in Iraq, the war that he supported vocally. Sad, sad person.
Bunch of crap written by countries that generally have their own priorities. The UN Security Council includes Russia and China. So yeah, I'm going to go with strongly disagree, or strongly agree on we can sometimes defy the idiocy of international law, which is an idiotic construct in the first place. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment.
He says idiotic so much. I feel like that's such a part of his vocabulary because such a part of his personality is trying to seem smart and smarter than everyone else. Idiotic. This is idiotic. Everything's idiotic. Everything except for what I say, idiotic.
Disagree. The reason I say disagree is because there was always that fusion. We just ignored it until the last 5 minutes when everybody got mad because conservatives were suddenly creating news. Okay, the economy. People are ultimately divided more by class than nationality. Strongly disagree, and World War I proved that that's a bunch of nonsense.
World War I proved that people are more divided by nationality than class. World War I, the imperialist war. The war that was the basis for Lenin's book Imperialism, proving that it was class. That World War I was the capitalists in the wealthy capitalist superpowers, Japan, the US, France, Russia, wherever else, fighting each other over their colonies. That is what World War I was. It was absolutely a capitalist, imperialist war where the imperialist, capitalist countries were fighting each other for domination of the world and fighting each other over their colonies. But that proved that we were divided by nationality? You think World War I happened because of people were so nationalistic and they were mad at other nationalities that they decided to go to war and fight for years and years and years and see millions of people die and see tons of devastation? No. That is the kind of devastation that can only, and death that can only be brought about by capitalist expansion. By capitalists warring with each other for expansion and for control of colonies in the global south. It was absolutely a war based on class, and the class politics during World War I are very, very interesting to study. Yeah, especially after World War I, when you had Germany forced to pay reparations, left in this destitute situation, which allowed, and you also had the largest communist party in the world before World War I, who voted to approve World War I, which was largely a death blow to that Communist Party. And in the devastation that followed World War I, you saw the rise of Hitler, as opposed to the rise of the communists in Germany. But I digress. It was a war that can be analyzed much more closely by looking at class versus nationality. And I can't believe Ben Shapiro just said that. He is dumb.
Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. I agree with that, because you can't actually control unemployment. You can only provide the principles necessary in order for an economy to flourish. The only way to control unemployment directly would be through top-down government control, and you could have a horrible economy with complete employment. That was called the USSR or Cuba or Venezuela until the last 5 minutes. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment.
Venezuela has an entirely top-down controlled economy. Venezuela has less nationalized industry, less public industry than France, Ben. Ben, I thought you were a political genius. I thought everybody except you was idiotic. Why don't you know that Venezuela is less socialist than France? Why did you just say they have a government top-down economy or that they had abolished unemployment? What are you talking about? And I'm not going to get into the argument about how Cuba and the USSR transformed themselves from, backwards peasant countries into industrialized superpowers and economic, the USSR turned into an industrialized superpower. Cuba's an island that's managed to fend off the US for years, but definitely not economic failures.
They require regulation. Well, I generally agree, but I wouldn't single out corporations there. Obviously, when it comes to environmental regulations, you do require environmental regulations. You have the tragedy of the commons. You have the ability to regulate externalities. From each according to his ability to each according to his need is a fundamentally good idea. Strongly disagree, because need should not dictate either moral worth or the morality of the thing that you need. It's a sad reflection on our society.
It shouldn't reflect moral worth or the morality of the thing that you need. So if you have disabled people in society, what they need doesn't matter. Their needs to survive doesn't reflect their worth at all. Their moral worth. Well, maybe to your morality, but to my morality, those people's needs should be met because they're people.
Something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product. Strongly disagree. Why is that? Why is that bad? I'm confused. You can still get it from the tap. Seriously, if you don't like the bottled water, just don't drink the bottled water. It seems pretty.
Do you think he even knows that hundreds of thousands of people in the global south die because they don't have access to clean water? That's why it's bad, because you have people bottling up the water and profiting off of it when we should be working together to make sure everybody has enough clean drinking water. That's how a rational economy would work, a rational mode of production would work, but instead, we bottle up the water and hoard it and try and make as much profit through selling it as a commodity as possible. And you hear him why don't you just drink from the tap? It's I don't know. Why don't you tell that to somebody living in a rural area in Sudan, Ben? Because there's a lot of people who have to walk 5 miles at least a day to a well in order to get water for their whole family. They can't just drink from the tap. And that is because of capitalism's unequal development.
Fantastic that you can go to the store and buy basically whatever you want. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Strongly disagree, because what would the alternative be? That it would be all government owned and allocated by the government? It is regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. Again, the premise of that question is so ridiculous. A lot of the time when people suggest that people are just manipulating money, what they are actually doing is mitigating risk and assessing risk and providing capital and liquidity markets that allow you to go out and spend on your company, on your business, or allow you to have a credit card, for example. So.
Oh, thank you. Thank you to the bankers. Thank you to the financial oligarchs for assessing risk and providing liquidity for my business. Yeah, guess what, Ben? I'm not a bajillionaire. I have a normal job, and everyone in my audience does. So the banks don't provide us liquidity. They charge us a bunch of interest on our houses and on any loans that we have to take out. Nobody likes bankers unless you're a banker or a super wealthy person like you. But I guess maybe that's who his audience is. Maybe his audience is just wealthy, entitled people. Okay, I think I'm done with this video for now. I can't handle any more Ben Shapiro. He drives me crazy. He's so smug. He's so dang...